She says, no. She says, I mean you. She says, I watch you all the time. She says, I'm...
For nearly 80 years, George Burns wasn't just a comedian. He was a constant. He was the kind of presence Americans grew old with, the voice that drifted through radios, televisions, and smoky nightclub rooms for generations. While other stars flared out or faded away, George Burns stayed, calm, wry, always standing just slightly to the side, delivering his jokes like observations rather than performances. By the time he reached his late 90s, he had become something rare in American culture, a living symbol of longevity, discipline, and survival. People assumed a man who lived that long, laughed that often, and earned that much must have mastered life itself. That assumption shattered after his death. When the details of his will surfaced in 1996, they stunned even those closest to him. Burns had accumulated a fortune estimated at over $30 million. It came from decades of radio contracts, film salaries, television royalties, real estate investments, and live performances that stretched into his final years. Most people believed that money would pass naturally to his family. His two adopted children, Sandra and Ronnie, had grown up in comfort and privacy, shielded from Hollywood chaos by parents who valued routine and restraint. Yet when the estate was settled, they received nothing, not a dollar, not a symbolic item, nothing but silence. Friends were baffled, the public was confused, and the children were left with questions that never received clear answers. George Burns had always been deliberate. He didn't act on impulse. He calculated, planned, and measured his decisions with the patience of someone who had survived poverty, loss, and humiliation. If he had erased his children from his will, it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And choices like that rarely come from a single moment. They grow quietly, fed by memories, disappointments, and betrayals that never make it into public interviews. George Burns entered the world in 1996 on New York's Lower East Side, a place that shaped him before he could even speak. Born Nathan Birnbaum, he arrived in a cramped apartment packed with siblings, noise, and anxiety. His parents were immigrants who carried old-world habits into a new country that moved too fast to care about them. Money was scarce, privacy didn't exist, hunger was common, yet laughter was everywhere. In those tight rooms, humor wasn't entertainment, it was survival. Jokes softened fear, wit distracted from hunger. That instinct never left him. When his father died suddenly, George was just a child. The family collapsed financially overnight. School became a luxury he couldn't afford. He worked instead, shining shoes, running errands, singing on street corners for pennies. He learned early that life didn't reward effort fairly, it rewarded adaptability. That lesson hardened him. He trusted systems less and people cautiously. Even as a boy, he understood that promises meant nothing unless backed by action. Entertainment became his escape and his weapon. Vaudeville circuits were brutal places where performers were cheated, heckled, and discarded without apology. George endured all of it. He was booed off stages, he slept in alleyways, he was abandoned by partners and promoters alike. Each failure sharpened him. He learned timing not just for jokes, but for people. He learned when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to walk away entirely. That emotional discipline would later define both his success and his distance from others. When he finally found his perfect partner in Gracie Allen, his life stabilized in a way it never had before. Their marriage wasn't flashy, it was structured. George handled finances, scripts, and long-term planning. Gracie carried the spotlight with her effortless, disarming confusion. Together, they built one of the most successful comedy partnerships in history. But even then, George remained guarded. He loved deeply, yet cautiously. He protected Gracie fiercely, but kept emotional walls that few ever crossed. They adopted 2 children later in life, after their careers were already secure. To the outside world, it looked like a natural next step, a quiet family behind closed gates in Beverly Hills. But parenting did not come easily to a man shaped by deprivation and independence. George believed strongly in self-reliance. He had survived without safety nets and expected the same resilience from others, even those he loved. Affection was present but measured. Expectations were high but rarely verbalized. As decades passed, the children grew into adults and subtle fractures appeared. Disagreements over money, lifestyle, and independence reportedly surfaced. George despised entitlement. He had clawed his way out of poverty and distrusted comfort that wasn't earned. Those close to him noticed that his patience thins when he felt taken for granted. He didn't explode, he withdrew. That was his pattern. Silence, not confrontation. Distance, not drama. After Gracie's death, something in him shifted permanently. He continued performing, continued joking, but those who knew him sensed a deepening solitude. Gracie had been his emotional anchor, the one person who could soften his edges. Without her, George leaned even more heavily on routine and control. His estate planning became meticulous. He revised documents carefully, more than once. He spoke openly about charity, legacy, and gratitude, but rarely about family dynamics. By his final years, Burns had outlived nearly anyone he trusted. Friends died, colleagues vanished, health declined. Reflection replaced ambition. He spoke often about luck, discipline, and timing, less often about forgiveness. When asked about death, he joked. When asked about family, he deflected. That avoidance spoke volumes. When the will was read, it became clear that George had chosen institutions over inheritance. Hospitals, charities, organizations that in his mind created opportunity rather than dependence. To some, it looked cold. To others, it looked consistent. He believed money should solve problems, not cushion lives. If there had been betrayal, emotional, financial, or moral, it remained private. George Burns took secrets seriously. He believed dignity included silence. His children never publicly detailed their side, perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of shock. The truth likely lived somewhere between disappointment and disbelief. A lifetime of quiet distance culminated in a final, irreversible decision. George Burns had always believed actions spoke louder than explanations. His will was his last statement. In death, he remained exactly who he had been in life, precise, unsentimental, unapologetically himself. The laughter he left behind still echoes, but so does the question, not of money, but of meaning, whether legacy is built through bloodlines or beliefs, whether love is proven through provision or principle. George Burns lived a century by trusting his instincts over expectations. In the end, he trusted them one last time and walked away without explaining himself, leaving the world to laugh, wonder, and argue long after the curtain fell.